I would like to welcome my good friend, Casandra Matej, to the Bold Line podcast today. Casandra has more than 20 years of experience in the hospitality and tourism industry, and she has worked at Visit Dallas, Visit San Antonio, and Starwood Hotels and Resorts worldwide, and also the Hyatt. She has a Bachelor of Science in Speech Communications, concentrating in organizational communication from the University of Texas at Austin. Do you want to go? Yeah, right. He likes the sport of spotting. When I read this, Casandra, I was like, I like that sport very much too. It's a very special treat, a mani or a pedi or even, a little facial. She
Yes.
was the first woman, though, this is exciting, to be chosen as Chief Executive Officer for Visit Orlando in its 37-year history. But she's been living in Orlando, and you just had an anniversary, three
I did.
years
Yes.
this past week, right? So, well, welcome to the podcast. We're very
Thank
happy to hear you.
thank you. I'm so delighted to be here. And yes, February 1st was my 3-year anniversary. Time has gone by very fast in many ways, and we've been able to do so much in the last 3 years. But I'm delighted to be a Central Floridian. My family and we've really enjoyed our transition to this great state and community.
Yes. So I know that you do occasionally miss one particular food from back home, because you told me about Whataburger, and I checked it out in Tallahassee because there is one up there, and they do have amazing burgers. So now I'm curious, Casandra, when you go back to Texas to visit family, what food might you miss from Orlando?
Well, of course, I think when you look at our culinary arts, it truly is an art form, and where we've been so elevated over the last,
Mhm.
10 to 12 years. And
Yes.
so when I talk about our culinary scene to my friends back home, it really is about the diversity. We now have 46 Michelin starred or recognized restaurants in our community, over 4,000 restaurants in like 40 different international cuisines. So there's so much choice, right? We often talk about how global our destination is and our community is, whether it's my neighbors but look at the restaurants, right? You can enjoy the taste of many different cultures. And I think that's something that's very unique to Central Florida.
Yeah, so you really have literally a smorgasbord of different. Uh,
Absolutely.
yes,
Absolutely.
yes. Well, wonderful. Well, tell me a little bit about how you got into this career of promoting areas, cities, and so what led you there? Tell me a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, it really was right out of college. I will tell you, 6, 7 months before graduation, I really didn't know what I was going to do. At the time, all through college, I worked at the state capitol of Texas. I worked more in the state government. And so
Mhm.
I always thought I'd probably go that route. But believe it or not, and I think the lesson here is you never know where you're going to learn about a career. I was floating down the river with a friend 6 months out of graduation. And he brought up that one of our mutual high school friends was in the destination promotional and marketing industry, and I should go do an informational interview. And so I did, because at that time I was interviewing a lot of doing more informational gathering on many different industries. And when we had that conversation, and it turned into a real interview, and it turned into my first job out of college. It was just the right pathway. I mean, I loved everything about it, whether it was the opportunity to travel, the opportunity to work with people, the opportunity to sell communities that I really enjoyed, as well as make an impact on those communities. So
Mhm.
it was just something that I felt was very well matched. But again, you never know where you're going to learn about a career.
That is so cool. That is so cool. And you've been leading some really cool cities, like Austin, and San Antonio, and so tell us a little bit about that space. What is it like to be leading a visit destination?
Again, it goes back to, I think it's important that you're at it with a community and a market that you really can be enthusiastic about and you care about. And the destinations that I've been able to represent have been amazing. And so you mentioned, San Antonio prior to coming here 3 years ago, 10 years. I led Visit San Antonio. And in some ways, the destinations are very, very different. In some ways, they're very similar because they're major destinations for their states, right? So when you think about San Antonio, it's a very historical, cultural destination. They had their 300th anniversary or birthday back in 2018. They host many Final Four tournaments. And so it is a hub for big events. So fast forward, and I can just give you an example of just a couple of weekends ago. On the same weekend, we had MegaCon at the convention center. So iDrive was very busy. We had the US Olympic Marathon Trials downtown on a Saturday, and on Sunday we had the Pro Bowl. And then at the very same weekend, we had a dance and cheer competition at Disney Worldwide of Sports. So every part of our community. So to be able to impact and bring the world to our destination has just been something that I've really enjoyed doing. And I think, when you're in part of a community, it's like welcoming people to your home, and you want to make sure that they have a great experience.
Were you able to get to all of those events in that weekend?
Oh, I sure was. So it made a drive through, or I had friends in town for the dance and cheer competition. So I went over there to see their children compete. But yes, I tried to make it in all places just to experience and see what the fan base was all about.
Wow. Wow. I am impressed. I'm very impressed. That's a
Yeah.
lot of round robin into those, but all very cool. And as you said, really bringing the world to our doorstep here in Orlando. 3 years ago, when you came here, was 2021.
Yeah.
And we were literally in the midst still of the COVID pandemic crisis. What was that like? How did you navigate coming in as the new CEO, given kind of the challenges that existed in particularly the tourism and hospitality industry at that time?
So when I was thinking back during that time, and I often do, when I was in San Antonio, I felt like I really got them into a good place, but a lot of the hard decisions had to be made, whether it was furloughs, whether it was layoffs, how we were going to maximize, because at the end of the day, it was not the right time in that moment in time to invite people to our destinations. And so really, when I think about February of 2021, we started to see the light, right? Because at some point, we had already hosted in Orlando the NBA bubble. So, and we also hosted the AAU volleyball. So we were really, all eyes were on Orlando and Central Florida because we were the example of some first in-person events. And so coming on board, I remember my first day and I literally walked into our amazing office, but it was me and three people because at that point, everyone was working from home, right? For various reasons, but safety being one of them. And so, starting a leadership role and only meeting in person three of your 150 team members, was quite a challenge because you want to build a relationship and rapport. But the reality is that the pandemic was tough on everyone. But I knew this was an opportunity of a lifetime because if any marketplace was going to be an example for the rest of the country and possibly the world, it was going to be Central Florida because we had local leadership, county and the city and the state that made decisions to keep us open for business and do so in a safe manner. So immediately my priorities were around recovery. How could we recover all aspects of the travel and tourism industry? Obviously, talking with you, when I think about people in the workforce and how are we going to get people back to serving visitors? How are we going to get visitors to feel comfortable coming back to our destination? So, we started looking at partnerships with for example, what is now our official healthcare partner, Orlando Health. They really stood side by side through the pandemic to work with groups to build out kind of a safety and medical plan to make sure that our customers felt secure coming to Central Florida, or even making sure that people understood how to navigate our destination if they were coming here for a family vacation. So, that was my focus. Certainly challenging, but what I think during hard times, you've got to look at what were the positives that came out of it. And I think some of the strong collaborations, partnerships, whether it was with like the Orlando Health example, or even, we launched a new campaign with the Orlando Economic Partnership for the first time in both of our histories. So, I do think some collaborative approaches were possibly even forced in during the pandemic that have achieved great success.
Yes, I would say unbelievably real, which is now our tagline here in Central Florida, has been very successful. And I know we have murals that are all over the world now, really talking about Central Florida. So how are we doing, Casandra? Have we recovered from pandemic and have those visitors back?
So in 2022, we welcomed 74 million visitors, and that is fantastic. It's not our peak, because really that was in 2019, but we're anticipating being fully recovered by the end of 2024. So how we look at it, Pam, is we look at three different markets. We look at the meeting and conventions. We look at the leisure domestic, so those coming to us from around the state as well as around the US, and then we look internationally. And the first two have fully recovered. Where we're still seeing a need for full recovery is in the international market. But we are, all of our data, all of our research shows by the end of 2024 that we should be fully recovered in all three segments. Now, there's always different headwinds facing different industries, and the travel industry is no different. And so, we're definitely watching with the economy if there is going to be a softening, but we think that we are primed for full recovery. So much so, we created a 3-year plan when I first got here. And by the end of 2026, we want to have welcomed nearly 80 million visitors. So that'll be an all-time high of visitation to our region.
So as we do that, and that is an incredibly huge number. It's extraordinary to me because I am in the talent side of that equation and know how important the jobs are here in Central Florida. As you think about that, I know I read in an article in the last couple of weeks that what that really means is there's almost 1 million people sleeping here in any given week, that actually, in addition to those who actually sleep here year round, right? So what kinds of challenges does that then create for our workforce?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's, we have in 25, we have the Universal's opening Epic, right? So there's going to be a whole new theme park that we as residents get to enjoy, and of course our visitors get to enjoy, right? So I think that's amazing, but it definitely does come with headwinds, right? Do we have enough talent in our region? So do we need to recruit? And companies are recruiting to our area. We also know that there's strong interest. People are moving here, on a weekly basis. And so, what does that growth mean? And that can have some impact on our overall infrastructure, which leads to community conversations around affordable housing and transportation. When I look at a global destination and how we go from being a good global destination to a great global destination, we've got to talk as a community about, a massive transit system. We were fortunate enough this year to welcome with its first ridership Brightline, but how we're going to serve the rest of the community so people can get to their jobs in a easy fashion. Because I often hear, people say, oh, yes, we can tell when it's high tourism season because traffic is so bad. And I often say, say thank you and be glad, because that benefits our community in so many ways. But, success definitely comes with some challenges, but I do know leadership around the community, they're talking. And when I think about how our industry contributes, you look at what Universal and Disney have done in the subject of affordable housing projects. And there's even more discussions around transportation. So I think there's a bright future, but we've got to make sure that we have, ways for our employees to get to their jobs, et cetera, things like that.
Yes, and you are really, you and your team are examples of jobs within tourism that and hospitality that really are both impacting other sectors, but also have incredible career paths. I think you and I are united in that we understand that the base of our workforce in this tourism and hospitality industry is increasingly skilled in customer acumen, right? And service. And many of those skills come with them, the soft skills that so many other businesses and industries want in their workforces. But in addition to that, as Universal expands and as our theme parks continue to grow, and as you already mentioned, sports tourism, we had all these different things happening. It really does have a ripple effect on wages. I know, for example, here in Central Florida, pre-pandemic, our wages from training programs hovered in the $16 an hour average wage area. Whereas now, post-pandemic, our average wages are almost $20 an hour. And so that's a significant shift. It's all industries are lifting wages. But in terms of those career paths, beyond just what we might think of as the typical guest services, what are some of the opportunities that are here?
Well, now you're going to put me on my soapbox because I'm very
Well,
passionate about this.
that's the
Yeah,
idea.
right. Well, for all those parents out there, you've heard the term stages and ages in your life. And one of the things that I like to do, and you touched on, is that, our industry sector, we're typically the first person to give your 16-year-old their first job. But we also have, I like to say that we're the industry of opportunity, as well as there are retirees that are employed by our industry because they're not, wanting to leave the workplace 100%. But some of the things that people forget about is that people can go and get their law degree, but be gainfully employed in our industry because we're an industry that's open 24/7. So you can go to college, get those degrees in other industry fields, but also work in our industry. But if you look at hotels, you look at the theme parks, you look at the airport, they're little cities within themselves. And so there's every type of career path for entry level. I cannot tell you how many stories that I've heard that someone started as a bellman and is now a general manager. Our very own chairman of Visit Orlando, of our board, he started in maintenance at SeaWorld, and then throughout the years, he became a park president. And I just say that because it really is an industry of opportunity. If you put it in the hard work and you do well in your entry level position, there is room for growth. And what's great is you get exposed to so many different positions. And it's whether if your passion is culinary, if it's service, if it's being a professional sales, there's architects, there's engineers. I mean, literally, when you think about employing an entire city, that's what these businesses are, is there are small communities among our big community.
Exactly. And we have many examples of that. And even in my own family, my husband retired from public safety in his career and now works in quasi-public safety inside of one of the theme parks. So it really is, an amazing opportunity. I like that, a career of opportunity for people at all different stages of their life. And you're right, many times these are the jobs that are those first jobs for our young workforce, our future workforce. How do you stay so motivated Casandra, you are incredibly passionate about this industry and what you do. How do you keep your momentum and motivation, and how might you suggest to others that are coming up, in this industry behind you to, keep their eye on the prize, so to speak?
Well, I hope the Visit Orlando team members would be able to tell you and answer this question, because I say this all the time, and it goes back to knowing the why. The reason I get up, the reason I'm so passionate is I know that our industry and what Visit Orlando does is that we are impacting the community that we live and
You've
that
been
we
listening
serve.
to Career Channel, the official
small
podcast
example,
of
and I
CareerSource
often say
North Florida.
follow the dollars.
Don't forget to
in
subscribe to
Central
the
Florida,
podcast on Spotify, Apple
50%
Podcasts,
or
or wherever
nearly
you listen to
50% of all
podcasts.
of our
To
sales
learn more
tax
about
is paid
CareerSource
by
North Florida
visitors.
and the services
So what
they
that
provide,
means for you and
visit
I is that that revenue goes to the general fund, and it pays for our
Thanks so much for
streets
listening,
and
and we'll be back
infrastructure.
soon with a new
It pays
episode.
for safety, such as fire and police. And so I'm very proud of that, the impact that we have on our community. I also look at, the quality of life that those of, the fact that we have chosen to live here, that we get to enjoy. I mean, we can go to Epcot for just lunch. We can go enjoy a football game such as the Pro Bowl at Camping World Stadium. And a lot of that, it was funded by visitors. Like, how many of us have just in awe seen a performance at Dr. Phillips Center for Performing Arts? That
Yes.
was paid by visitors. And so I think it's really important that people understand the impact that, because of the level of visitation that we have in this community, that we all get to benefit as residents. So that's my why.
I love that. I love that. And you're right. It is a place that is fun. There's always something happening here in Central Florida. I have always felt motivated from the day I moved here, not quite 12 years ago now, to, know that I could just, if I wanted to, I'm not sure I'd go to Epcot for lunch, but I might go for an evening stroll around the World Showcase, and particularly this time of year, because it's flower and garden season
Beautiful.
at Epcot. Yes, but to the point, even beyond the theme parks, that we have so many cultural opportunities. Like you said, the Dr. Phillips Center is state of the art in terms of theater. There are 3 different venues within that complex, and it really has tremendously grown here. And I like to say to visitors, venture up a little further north from the theme parks, because there is so much in Orlando, downtown city proper. So
Pam, I'll give you
me.
Most people don't realize this, but a lot of our visitors, of our domestic visitors that come to our community, nearly 50% never step foot in a major theme park. So they are enjoying our ecotourism. They are enjoying our arts and culture. They're enjoying of course, we've talked about, the uniqueness of all the different neighborhoods, and people are looking for that local experience and living like a local. So very proud that Visit Orlando, we're one of the only organizations that gets to tell the entire story, because some people may be introduced to Orlando because of one of the major theme parks, but it's our job to make sure they come back or they extend their stay to enjoy all the things that there is to do in our destination.
I love it. I love it. So you mentioned the milestone of, looking forward to that 80 million mark. What else should we, look forward to, events or initiatives in the Visit Orlando or in the Central Florida future?
Well, what's really fun is, we look at and how we market the destination. It's all under the umbrella of unbelievably real, right? When you put those 2 words together, and they're not commonly paired, but when you think about how you describe Central Florida, it's unbelievably real. I know, with the rocket launches, many of us can just step right outside and see those rocket launches. That is unbelievably real. The fact that we do have restaurants that provide 40 different international cuisines, that is unbelievably real. Or the fact that you can zip line over gators. That is unbelievably real. So I challenge everyone, what is your unbelievably real? But, looking at the head, we look at different times of the year right now. We're running a Winter Doesn't Exist Here campaign in some of the colder, some of our key markets that are a lot colder. In fact, in the UK, we have warming bus stations and they're Instagrammable moments, but we've brought the heat to the UK. Up in New York, we sponsored a skate night at Bryant Park where we were giving away hot chocolate and orange scarves. And we have billboards all throughout the city showcasing what the weather is here right now and inviting people to, enjoy our warm climate. So, those are some fun things. But what just kicked off on March 1st is Visit Orlando team. We were able to bring Feed Phil that is on
That's right.
Netflix. And
Yes.
it just aired on March 1st, and it's going to be in over 119 countries in multiple different languages. But we're so excited that Phil Rosenthal did an entire episode on Orlando's culinary theme. And then later in the spring, Michelin will be announcing if we have any additional recognitions of our restaurants as part of the Michelin Guide. So there's always something, when we work hand in hand with Florida Citrus Sports, and they're bringing international soccer matches or football matches to our community. There's going to be a Brazilian match that will be here that we'll be promoting because, Brazil travelers love Orlando and we love Brazil travelers. So, more to come on that front, but there's always something, festivals, everything that people can enjoy.
Yes, I love it. I love it. What do you and your family do in your downtime here?
Downtime that's funny because
That you might have,
right.
maybe.
It's
Every
all
couple
about the kids' their events. My daughter is a rower, so you'll see us often on the weekends at a regatta watching her, and my son plays basketball and baseball, so we're out there watching them. So that's really our family outings. But if we have a weekend, we really like to explore. We really like to make the most of the destination that we're living in. And so what are those festivals? What are the events? In fact, we've got really big lineups for concerts and we love live music. And who doesn't like to go cheer on our very own Orlando Magic? We love the basketball games as a family.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, if our listeners want to learn more about Visit Orlando or you, Casandra, how can they find you?
Well, the best way is visitorlando.com. And in fact, this service is also free for not only our visitors from out of town, but our locals. You can set up a planning service appointment with one of our experts if you want to learn more about your very own destination and maybe help build an itinerary for you and your family to do a staycation in Central Florida.
Oh, I love that. I didn't know that. That is
Yeah.
very cool. Well, thank you again for being my guest on our Bold Line podcast. This podcast is focused on sharing insights and connecting people to what matters. So unbelievably real opportunities here in Orlando and Central Florida. We are very focused on being brilliant at what we do, innovative and offering solutions, being resilient to our community, and also to inspire individuals and companies to achieve their potential. So I appreciate so much having this conversation with you, Casandra, and thank you very much to our listeners. We'll see you next time.